Welcome everyone. On behalf of the Institut Français in the United Arab Emirates, please join our new program of podcast series, Guests of the Institut Français in the UAE. Today, it's an honor to welcome Mr. Gilbert Sinoué, who traveled from Paris to join us today for the Abu Dhabi International Book Fair. Welcome.
Hello.
Most of us know you for who you are, but for those of us who don't know, you grew up in an Arab and Western double culture. Born to a Greco-Egyptian Catholic father and a French mother, you studied at a French school in Cairo. You started your career as a songwriter and wrote lyrics for famous singers such as Dalida and Claude François. You then moved on to novel writing and have since written more than 30 novels, essays, and biographies highlighting your interests in the Arab world. Your books have been translated in more than 15 languages. Some of your most famous works are The Silence of the Gods, The Sapphire Book, To My Son, Armenia, Jerusalem, and in addition to your most recent one, and one we are keen on discussing today, The Falcon. Thank you so much for being with us today, and welcome. You are here with us in Abu Dhabi for the book fair, obviously. Is it your first time here?
No, I've been here many times. First time was something like 25 years ago.
Wow.
At a book fair, invited by a woman club. And then I came back many times after that.
And do you notice a difference today?
Between 25 years and
Yes.
now. But of course, things are changing at a high speed. Buildings, hotels, motorways, communication, everything is
The people
growing
as well.
and changing positively, actually.
So you started your career as a songwriter. How did you move on to novel writing?
Well, writing a song is like it's a kind of sprint, 100 meters, lasts 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Or 3 minutes for a song, and but it's still writing. It's not. I didn't play violin and suddenly went to writing novels. And writing a novel needs more breath, like a marathon. It's 40 kilometers or 100 kilometers. So the difference is: are you capable of doing it? Do you have the energy to go from 3 minutes to 1 year of writing? But according to me, writing is still writing. It doesn't change anything.
Okay. So could you give us a brief presentation of your work as a writer and your literary style? Of course, we presented who you are as a person in your life, but who are you according to you?
Who am I? That's a very difficult question. I need a psychiatrist. Look, as you know, I was born in Egypt, and I was dreaming about being a writer, actually, because I was a lonely son in Egypt. And at that time, in the 60s, we had one channel TV in black and white, no smartphone, no internet. And I was really getting bored coming back from school, especially during the holidays. So my father had lots of books. And I remember the first book I picked from his library was an atlas, geography, with all the country of the world in it. And it made me dream, looking at Argentina, etc. And that was my first contact with reading, apart reading in school. And then I took another book and a second book and a third book, and I discovered another world. I was traveling without leaving my room. I was dreaming in my room. And I had a grandfather who was a quite original person. And every night he used to tell me a story that he was inventing, of course, not reading. And this story never ended, because either I was falling asleep or he was falling asleep. And I was attracted by the fact that there were no end of it. And I was inventing myself the end of the story. So I was imagining stories in my mind at that time. I was 6, 7 years old. And I said, well, maybe writing stories would be fantastic. But of course, my mother and my father told me you have to study, make a serious job. Writing is not a serious job. Being an artist, no. Anyway, to make a long story short, I left Egypt for Paris, and I liked music very much. And I used to play guitar at home, but normally, like anybody can play guitar. And I decided to be serious. So I went to the École Normale de Musique of Paris, and I studied really classical guitar. I thought this was very serious. And then I became a teacher. And then I started to compose music and then lyrics. And that's how life took me to the novels. But you ask me who I am. I don't know actually, because I feel Arab completely, and I feel French completely. And I used to say it's like coffee with milk. You cannot separate the milk from the coffee. They are completely linked together. So that's how I feel. That's how I feel I am. I am a cup of coffee with milk. And I like the two culture. I love some parts of the Arab culture. I hate some other parts. And I love some parts of the Occidental culture, and I hate some other parts. And that makes me what I am.
Okay, that's fascinating. Thank you for that. So throughout your careers, who are the writers that have inspired you and continue to inspire you today?
What continues to inspire me today?
Yes.
Everything. Everything. You know, I always say I don't choose the subjects of my novels. Yes, it happened, but in 35 novels, 34, I don't know how much, I rarely choose the subject. It's the subject that comes to me. For instance, I wrote a book, you mentioned Armenia. It's about the genocide of the Armenian by the Turks in 1915. And I'm not Armenian, and I don't consider myself being allowed to talk about this tragedy. And one day I opened my TV and I heard that the Turkish wanted to enter the common market. And I was really shocked because nobody seems to ask them to, apologize or say, okay, we're sorry, we made a mistake, it was the war. Nobody asked anything. We've asked Germany to kneel after the Shoah, and to the Turk, nothing. And I was so moved and so shocked because I had lots of Armenian friends in Egypt, in Lebanon. In my school, there were lots of Armenian. That I was sad for them, and I decided to write a book on the genocide, talking about Sheikh Zayed. We'll talk about it probably. I didn't have any idea about who was Sheikh Zayed a few years ago. And the fact that I came here in Abu Dhabi and I saw his portrait everywhere, people started to talk to me about him. And I said in the beginning, well, another ruler in this area. And then I started to make research. And then I discovered this fantastic character. So each time it's a discovery, but it's not my decision. It comes from outside.
And in terms of writers and people who have written great novels, who do you get inspiration from?
No, it's like if you ask me what kind of film I prefer or what kind of book I prefer, my inspiration came from, of course, in the beginning, classical writers. When I was young, it was Alexandre Dumas, or it was the Three Musketeers, and Jules Verne, and then I started to read more deep classical writers. I think if I have to mention one name, it would be Albert Camus, French Nobel Prize of Literature. Probably him was really someone who, well, I feel osmosis. I feel close to him, to his work.
Okay, thank you. And so now to get into the Falcon and the reason why you're here today with us. You have often written about famous figures and historical heroes in your past books. How did you get the idea to write about Sheikh Zayed in your most recent one?
Well, like I was saying, I came here invited 20 years ago at a book fair, and I heard his name. You can't avoid it. And then I came back after a few years, another book fair, and again, people started to ask, who's this guy? And people started to talk to me about Sheikh Zayed, about what he did. In the beginning, I thought it was very exaggerated. I didn't really believe all the things they said. Then, after 3 years ago, I was invited here too, and I started to read about Sheikh Zayed, to try to understand why they called him the father of the nation, why they considered themselves the children of Sheikh Zayed. And I read, and I discovered that this man was probably the most exceptional figure in the Middle East. I don't know one leader, and I know this region, I was born in this area. I cannot name one person except maybe Bourguiba. The idea was not to write a historical biography of Sheikh Zayed, because there are thousands. And I wanted to write a novel. So that was a big difference, is to make of Sheikh Zayed the character, the hero of a novel. And I suggested the idea to a person called Dr. Ali bin Tamim, who was at that time the manager, the director of the Abu Dhabi media. And he thought the idea was great. And thanks to him, I could go to the libraries, to the archive, and I visited El Ain, I met people who met Sheikh Zayed. I made a kind of inquiry, and it gave that novel.
So that brings me to my next question. It's a historical novel, and it's a fictionalized biography. So how do you mix the fictional and the factual elements without losing the biographical elements of the book? Sorry.
Well, that's the big problem. Because when you write what we call the historical book, you have to, it's like making a good plate. You don't have to put too much salt, too much pepper. You have to balance between the facts, the history with a big H, and the novel. And this, after 34 novels, well, you know how it works. You feel if it's too much documented, and it becomes boring. You go to Wikipedia and you make a paste, and so it's a work. You learn every time you write.
And you become a natural at it.
Absolutely. Like a dancer who dances without even thinking about the steps.
Okay. So now that you have gotten access to a lot of sources and people, and you've visited the UAE many times, you know the country. Has that experience changed your understanding of the UAE and even the region's culture and history? And all the new understandings that you have gained while writing this book, have they changed your outlook on the region?
First of all, you have to know that in Europe, we have an image of the Emirates which is very basic. We see towers, oil, money, towers, oil, money. That's the image we have in Europe from the Emirates, Dubai, of course, and so. But when you come here and you meet people and you make research, especially on, again, what Sheikh Zayed did, you discover something completely different. You discovered, first of all, that thanks to Sheikh Zayed, education here has reached the perfection, because this man was obsessed by education. And I think a big philosopher called Ibn Rushd used to say, ignorance leads to hate, and hate leads to violence. Somebody who is not educated is afraid of everything. He's afraid of his neighbor. He doesn't know who he is. So education is an example for the whole Arab world. I don't want to mention Egypt or Morocco, whatever, but we know it's a disaster there. So I have discovered education, culture, and the approach between man and woman. The leading place of women in Abu Dhabi is probably much more important than in any other Arab world. So all these aspects are unknown in Europe. And this is what not changed my mind, but completely opened my eyes in something different completely.
Okay, so, and do you feel a difference between the way that your book, The Falcon, was received in France and between the way it was received in the Arab world?
Well, I don't have very much echoes about how it was received in the Arab world. I know how it was, roughly how it was received here, actually very well. People, of course, were very surprised that I made of Sheikh Zayed the character, the hero of a novel. They were not used to that, especially that it's a monologue. It's Sheikh Zayed who speaks, I, Sheikh Zayed. So I must say it was terribly risky what I did, because, as you know, Sheikh Zayed is a sacred character here, and taking the risk of speaking and putting words in his mouth, it was terribly risky, but apparently it was accepted very, 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 very well.
Okay. And your book has been translated in Arabic.
Yeah.
Are there any new translations? Will it be translated in other
There is
languages?
an English translation probably next year, yeah.
Okay.
And a Greek one, but with the COVID, everything has been completely stopped for all this time.
Yes, but the English and Greek audiences have that to look forward to.
Yeah.
You're an expert of the Arab world, obviously, but this is your first book about the UAE. Do you have any particularities that you have noticed while writing this book, or distinct features of the publishing market in the UAE?
Actually, as I told you, what I noticed was the other face of the Emirates that I discovered. But concerning you mean the publishing literature, books? I have no experience. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know how many people read here. I don't know if people likes to read. I don't know how many readers there are, how many books there are sold. I have no information. I don't know.
So you've written about many figures in the Arab world and in Arab countries. Who or what country would you like to write about next?
None.
None.
None, because I think that there are no. I wrote, a huge 3 volumes on the Middle East called Inshallah. starting from 1918 to the World Trade Center, through families who lived the events, the Iraqi war, the War of October, Israel, Palestine, through Iraqi family, Lebanese family, Egyptian family. So I think I'm off now. I wrote what I had to write. I don't see anything now that could inspire me, especially nowadays. Knowing the situation of the Arab world, I'm not inspired at all.
Okay. Gilbert Sinoué, thank you so much for being with us today. It was a great pleasure to have you.
Thank you to invite me. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. This episode was presented by Rim Hamito, Cultural Assistant at the Institut Français.